Hi, everybody, and welcome to Nutrition After Cancer. My name is Candace Schreiber. I am a clinical dietitian at The Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, and my role at the university is to provide supportive care nutrition programs for cancer survivors and their caregivers. We offer a vast majority of classes such as cooking classes and educational classes to help cancer survivors throughout their journey and help them to eat better. So I'll be doing the presentation today. We'll go ahead and get started. So we're first going to start with just why nutrition is important, because that's a good place to start. It's really important because it helps you really heal after treatment. Lots of changes have happened throughout treatment, and providing your body with good nourishment just helps you continue that healing process. This may take a while, but eating well does really help with that. And as well, it offers other protective effects for the future. A healthy diet is just one thing that you can do to help reduce risk of cancer. There's lots of other lifestyle behaviors that help reduce risk of recurrence. Nutrition is one of those, and then things like exercising, not smoking, limiting alcohol, things like that, or other lifestyle behaviors that go along with a healthy diet to help reduce risk. The steps to take to reduce risk of recurrence, since I've already mentioned that, is we're going to really focus this presentation on nutrition, which we recommend a plant-based style eating pattern. So that's really the core of the presentation that we'll be talking about today. But other things to reduce risk, obviously, as I already mentioned, engaging in physical activity, and then following up with your healthcare team about survivorship planning. So at OSU, we have a supportive care clinic that follows cancer survivors throughout their cancer journey. And it's kind of a one-stop shop clinic. You can go see a nurse practitioner, you can get physical therapy, occupational therapy, massage therapy. There's a dietitian for nutritional counseling. It's a really comprehensive look at the whole body and how we can kind of help you throughout the journey. Also, psychosocial counseling is available at OSU. And then on my side, I do the classes for cancer survivors. And so I encourage you to explore those opportunities from the hospitals that you've gotten treatment at. You can look into see what community resources are available. All the programs that I do are free of charge for survivors as well as their caregivers. So there might be something that you can engage in as well to help with your journey throughout survivorship. So the next thing that we'll be talking about is following the AICR recommendations for cancer prevention. So the AICR, which is the American Institute for Cancer Research, is a organization that really dives into looking at the research between diet and cancer and what we can do to prevent cancer, prevent recurrence, and as well as prevent other diseases. And they look at lots and lots of research, and based on this research, they've created these 10 guidelines for prevention and survivorship. So I just want to go through what those 10 guidelines are. So number one, being a healthy weight, and actually behind not smoking, being a healthy body weight is the number one thing you can do to reduce risk for cancer as well as recurrence. Being physically active, eating a plant-heavy diet, which we'll be talking about throughout this presentation. Limiting consumption of fast foods or processed foods that are high in fat and added sugar. Limiting consumption of red and processed meat. I'll also be touching on this as this is very important for colorectal cancer survivors. Limit consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages. Limit alcohol consumption. Don't use supplements for prevention. This isn't to say you shouldn't be taking supplements if they were recommended. We just don't want you to think that if you take your vitamins, you don't have to eat a healthy diet. For number 9 is kind of very specific population for mothers, breastfeed if you can. And then number 10, after a diagnosis, follow these recommendations if you can. So depending on where you are after treatment, if you're freshly off treatment, you may kind of ease into these guidelines and ease into this plant-based style eating, especially if you're still not feeling well. However, if you are feeling well, you can kind of start following these as more closely as possible in this plant-based eating style. And these recommendations, there's no way to be perfect on them. We don't expect people to follow every single one every single day. It's just, to put on your radar just so you're aware of what the things that you can do to prevent a reoccurrence, what those things are. So along with the recommendations, the AICR does a continuous update project where they look at specific cancers and what the research is showing, and they are continually updating this based on the research. So this one is specifically for colorectal cancer, and you can see that it was updated in 2017. So this is just, again, looking at the evidence, what we know can help reduce risk, so we can really, pay attention to those things in our physical activity for sure. We're going to talk about fiber and whole grains and those types of things that can really help reduce our risk of recurrence. And then looking at what increases risk. So processed meat, alcohol, things like that, being a healthy weight. We will also talk about those a little bit more. Again, the red meat increases risk, and we'll get into that. But again, I just wanted to kind of show what the evidence was, the strength of it, so again, the things that you can do to help reduce recurrence. So plant-focused diet, so this is what most of the presentation that I'm going to talk about is going to be on. And I don't want anybody to think that I'm telling you have to be vegan or vegetarian, because that's not the case. When I talk about a plant-based or plant-focused diet, I just mean really consuming the majority of plant foods for your meals and then doing less animal products. So it's not vegan, it's not vegetarian, just emphasizing smaller portions of meat and dairy and really making veggies the star of your show for your meals. Limiting highly processed foods, again, with the added sugar, added fat, added salt. And really, another thing that I always like to really focus on is colorful diets. So try and check off every color of the rainbow every day if you can, with veggies and fruit and whole grains. So why plant-based diet? What are the benefits? Well, it'll give you all the vitamins and minerals you need if you're eating, a varied plant-based diet. Plants have phytochemicals, and we're going to talk more about what those are in the next few slides. There's also fiber in plant foods where there's not in animal products. And fiber, again, if you remember, is one of those key things in reducing colorectal cancer risk and recurrence. They're lower in calories, which will help us control weight. And then they provide healthy gut bacteria as well, which is important for our bodies. So phytochemicals are what make plants the color that they are, what make them taste the way they taste. So the red in tomatoes and the purple in eggplant, those colors come from their phytochemicals. And what those are just natural compounds that can have benefits to our body. So we're seeing from research that these specific compounds can do a lot of great things in our body and have a lot of benefits that can help reduce cancer risk as well as other diseases. There's several hundred out there that have been identified, and every time you eat a variety of plants, you're getting these phytochemicals. So fiber, the other part of the puzzle of reducing risk, the recommendation is about 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day. The average American gets about 15, so we're well below what our kind of guideline is. And we really want to aim to get fiber from foods. And I mean, when I say foods, I mean whole foods. So, if you go to the grocery store, you can find added fiber to bars and brownies and cereals. But what you want to really focus on is getting it from whole plant foods, such as fruits, vegetables, whole grains. There's two kinds of fiber, and if in a normal healthy diet, we want to kind of get a balance of both types of fiber. However, if you're experiencing any kind of GI upset, such as constipation or diarrhea, there may be a certain fiber that you want to focus more on. And so I put there in the slide, if you're experiencing constipation, insoluble fiber is key versus diarrhea, soluble fiber is key. In the next slides, I have some examples of those. So here's your, just some examples. This is a comprehensive list of fiber and foods, but just some ideas for soluble and insoluble fiber. And then foods that are highest in fiber. So, if you are not having any GI upsets, then just look for foods high in fiber, whether that's insoluble or insoluble. So you can see there's a variety of fruits, vegetables, grains, nuts, beans, legumes, things like that. If you're looking at that list and kind of thinking to yourself, I don't like any of that, there's much more things that have a good source of fiber in them. So you can definitely, you don't have to follow this list exactly, but it's just some good ideas. Whole grain carbohydrates, this is a great source of fiber. So I encourage you to maybe switch from white pasta to whole wheat, or white bread to whole wheat, or white rice to brown rice. These are all going to provide more fiber, more nutrients. I will say though, if you are experiencing any diarrhea or need to be on a low residue or low fiber diet, that this is not something you want to follow. You'd rather do those white products and those white refined grains for now, just until those problems kind of ease up a little bit. So how do you adapt a plant-focused eating pattern? So we're going to kind of dive into that a little bit. So it's great to know why you need to do it, but now you may want to know, how am I supposed to do this? So I'm just going to offer some tips, that I see work for other people, that work for me. Adding 1 serving of fruits and vegetables into your day any way that you can. And so here's some examples. If you're not eating fruit for breakfast, start with there. Maybe add some berries to your oatmeal or your cereal. If you are having with lunch, a side of chips or pretzels or crackers with your meal, maybe do a side of raw veggies or a side of a salad or a fruit there too. If you're a snacker, if you're having those packaged snacks, you can kind of swap those out for, a whole piece of fruit or vegetable. Choosing 2 vegetables with dinner and decreasing meat portion. This is something that I started doing a while ago, just to kind of increase the veggies in my diet. I kind of looked at what I was doing, and a lot of us tend to just eat vegetables with dinner. And so I started to think about getting that many servings with dinner, and I don't want just, a whole half a plate of broccoli. I wanted some variety. And so I started adding 2 vegetables with dinner instead of just 1. And I always want to specify too, don't jump right into doing all these things at once. This is kind of a slow transition. A plant-focused diet does not have an end date. And so it's kind of a lifestyle, lifelong. And so you don't want to do too many changes too fast that aren't sustainable. Maybe you pick one of these things for 1 meal and start with just that week. And then maybe the following week, you maybe do it 2 days, and so on and so forth. You kind of want to ease yourself into this. Eating more plant-based protein. So as I already mentioned, we kind of want to decrease those animal products and swap in some plant-based protein. Some ideas here, black beans instead of ground meat for tacos. If you're doing taco night and you usually put a pound of ground meat on the skillet, maybe do a half a pound and then add in black beans for the rest. Lentil and chili soups and casseroles. If you do a meat chili, you can swap out and do a lentil chili, or again, half and half. Tofu is a great plant protein, and so use it in stir fries, smoothies, salads. It really doesn't have a flavor. It just takes on whatever you pair it with. So if you're doing like a stir fry sauce, that's what it'll taste like. It really doesn't have a flavor of its own. Adding chickpeas to salad instead of chicken, and then switching to whole grains again will provide you more protein than just those white grains. One thing I also encourage the participants of our classes to do is to find vegetarian recipes. Not to say, again, that you have to be vegetarian, but it's sometimes easier to find those recipes and then add in small amounts of meat if you'd like. Turning your favorite recipes into plant-based meals, you can certainly do that. If you like do, again, just half the meat and add in more veggies. Or if you enjoy, a pot roast, do a little bit less meat and add in, carrots and potatoes and mushrooms, maybe a side of sauteed spinach, things like that. So you certainly don't have to stop eating your favorite foods. It's just kind of adjusting portion sizes a little bit. I'm a big meal planner, so I really encourage people to meal plan in advance, because when you think about and put more thought into your meals, they tend to be a little bit healthier. You can plan out, again, how many vegetables you're having to increase those, and then your food doesn't go to waste. A lot of people often tell me, I have great intentions, I buy all these vegetables, but then they sit and go bad and I have to throw them away. If you have a plan for them, then they don't go bad and you get to eat them and actually get the benefits. Cooking more meals and snacks at home. Restaurants just really don't make their meals plant-based often, unless you're at a specialty restaurant. So there's usually not a lot of veggies at restaurants. And so cooking more at home will allow you to increase that vegetable intake. Here it is again, eat more veggies, find new ways to cook them, be open-minded to trying new ones. Start out slow, again, focus on one meal a day or one snack to increase your fruit and veggies. Also, having a reason can help with those behavioral transitions. Don't just do it because I'm telling you to. Do it for yourself, for your improved health, to help reduce risk of recurrence or other diseases. Even if it's just, environmental impacts or animal welfare, find a reason that it's important for you. Skipping those highly processed foods and focusing on those whole foods. So highly processed foods is foods, again, with a lot of added sugar and salt. Technically, bagged spinach or frozen veggies are processed foods. Those are fine. I always encourage people to make use of frozen and canned fruits and vegetables, because these are wonderful, easy ways to add more fruits and vegetables. But when we talk about highly processed foods, we mean foods with a lot of added sugar, a lot of added fat, so a lot of prepared meals and things like that. Try new foods, meal planning, prep things in advance is my number one recommendation when meal planning. I wash and chop all my veggies once a week, and then they're ready to go for the whole week. And that helps me put my meals together, in 20 minutes or less. Preparing for on the go. So if you're going to be, in the car or doing a lot of errands all day or going on vacation, pack things so you don't have to stop. Again, it's a lot harder to find healthy foods out and about than it is in your own home. Choose any vegetable you like. I really tell people, if you don't like kale, don't eat kale. If you don't like carrots, don't eat carrots. There's no one thing that prevents or causes cancer. So there's no one thing you have to be eating or don't have to be eating. It's really about patterns. And so choose the vegetables that you like. My number one recommendation for cooking is roasting, because I think that it brings out the flavor the best. You can steam, microwave, those are all good ways to preserve nutrients, but when we're just focusing on taste, I would say roasting is the best way. Just until lightly browned, fork tender. Olive oil is what a good, tasting olive oil or good tasting oil that you can use for cooking, using those spices, garlic powder, onion powder, rosemary, things like that to make them taste good. This is just kind of recommendations. Sometimes people want really specific, especially if you're not someone that cooks a lot. I often find that people like really specific times and temperatures and things like that. So I just wanted to provide that for various veggies. And one thing I always like to tell people to do is, I like to do a big sheet pan of various veggies. So sometimes if I'm doing, root veggies, carrots, I'll start those. And then if I'm adding, tomatoes or bell peppers, I'll pull that sheet out after 10 minutes or whatever, and then add to it. So I don't have to use more than one cutting board or baking dish, because nobody likes to clean extra things. So you can do it that way as well. And then once you roast those veggies, for me, like I said, I like to do a big sheet pan in the beginning of the week and then use them throughout the week so they're ready to go. You can use them over salads, over whole grains, or whole grain pasta. You can throw on some roasted veggies, drizzle with a little olive oil, and you get a great meal right there. A Buddha or whole grain bowl. This is basically, you just start with your grain, you add your roasted veggies, maybe some beans, chickpeas, and then maybe a quick sauce. You can add those veggies in with scrambled eggs to kind of start your day with some veggies. These are just some sites and blogs that I like to use that I've found some really good recipes from. So I just wanted to offer up those if anybody is looking for good, healthy recipes to find. This is just an example of what a plant-focused day might look like. This is not a specific calorie or protein or anything like that meal plan. It's just kind of ideas to offer for what a plant-based diet looks like. You can see how colorful it is. That's the number one thing I noticed when I first looked at it. So again, looking to see if you can get every single color of that rainbow in your meals. So we're going to kind of focus on that other part of the colorectal cancer box where it increases risk. And so a couple of those things were red and processed. Answer about this is what is a red and processed meat, why it's important to reduce those, and then how we can reduce those in our diet and what to replace them with. So what is considered a red and processed meat? So that's beef, pork, and lamb. And I always like to point out that pork is a red meat because they have a really good marketing campaign, but pork is technically a red meat. And then processed meat is anything that's preserved by smoking, curing, salting, or adding preservatives. So that's things like your deli, your lunch meats, sausage, bacon, hot dogs, brats, things like that. For the recommendation for red meat, it's no more than 12 to 18 ounces per week, which is, again, pretty liberal, so you can still include that in your diet. But you really want to limit processed meat as much as possible. This poses a greater risk for colorectal cancer and recurrence than red meat does. There's no set amount for processed meat because any amount increases risk. So it's really just, get it as little as possible. That's not to say you can never have a hot dog at a baseball game again. It's just something that you want to think about. If you are someone that eats a turkey sandwich every day, that might be something that you want to kind of alter a little bit and reduce the amount of the deli meat that you have. So why? There's still kind of some speculation with a definite why it increases colorectal cancer risk. A couple of the thoughts were that it does create, when you smoke or cure something, it creates compounds that cause cancer, those nitrates. Red meat is actually higher in heme iron, which is a type of iron in our in foods, and that could damage the lining of the colon. Cooking meat at high temperatures creates cancer-forming compounds. You may have heard that grilling meat can increase those cancer-causing compounds because it's such a high temperature. And it also can promote inflammation, and chronic inflammation, again, increases risk for cancer. So how do we reduce red and processed meat? So one thing I often tell people is just, leave these for special occasions if you can. Again, like I mentioned, if you're going to a baseball game, you can have a hot dog there, or, birthdays or different celebrations, you can leave these foods for special occasions. If you don't leave them for special occasions and you do eat red meat regularly, that's okay too. It just should be really small portions and load up on those vegetables. So the red meat, or any meat really, should only be about a quarter of your plate, where vegetables should be about half the plate, with whole grains on the other quarter. So again, if you're having, pulled chicken or something for dinner, it should be a small portion with lots of veggies surrounding it. Instead of a lunch meat sandwich, one thing that I started doing was, instead of lunch meat, I would just cook chicken, like chicken breasts, and then shred those to put on sandwiches or in wraps for the week instead of deli meat. Trying one meat-free day a week to reduce meat intake. And again, using those different protein sources that we've already talked about. So 2 questions I just wanted to kind of mention before we move on from processed meats is 2 of the most common questions that I get is, should I buy those nitrate-free or uncured products instead? And the answer to that one is those aren't better. And so from what we know right now, those should still be reserved for special occasions. So if you know you eat bacon every day and you just change to nitrate free or uncured bacon, that's not really providing any benefits. So those products should still only be an occasional thing, even though they are marketed as uncured. And then should I buy plant-based meat products? So there's lots of these out there now, a lot of plant-based products. And most of these, I'm not going to say all, but a lot of these are pretty highly processed. And again, not something I would consider as a health food to have on a regular basis. So really, again, focusing on those whole foods, not those highly processed products. So every once in a while, that's fine. If you buy one of those meat alternatives, you can certainly have those on occasion. I just wouldn't make it an everyday part of your eating plan. So to kind of wrap up, I just wanted to make sure I point out again, I already mentioned that there's no one individual food or one individual nutrient that causes or prevents cancer. Eating patterns are what make the biggest difference. So this plant-based eating style, if you're doing this day in and day out over the course of time, this is what helps prevent risk of recurrence in other diseases. So it's not just something you do for the short term. It only makes a difference if you continuously do it. And with that said, if you're continuously doing this, whole plant focused diet, the things you do on occasion don't really matter. If you have some ice cream here and there, or, those foods that people don't consider to be exactly healthy, that's okay, because for the most part, you're following this healthy plant-based style eating pattern. So there's no food or nutrient that I tell people to completely never eat again. Everything can fit. And also too, nutrition and what you eat is just one thing that can help reduce risk. It's not the end all be all. There's lots of other things. It's just one piece of the puzzle to help reduce risk. There's lots of other lifestyle behaviors that you want to engage into as well to help reduce risk. All right, well, thank you very much.